Imagine stepping into a prehistoric swamp where dragonflies the size of hawks dart through the air and centipedes longer than a human leg slither among ferns. These scenes are not fantasy. 300 million years ago, Earth was ruled by a menagerie of giant insects and amphibians. We might see a dragonfly with a wingspan like a diner plate, or a centipede creeping around like a bicycle chain on steroids. These titans cast real shadows over the landscape. Giant millipedes the length of sofas, and amphibians as big as dogs all shared that swamp. Before long, these huge creatures began to shrink or vanish. It's as if someone turned down the volume on life itself. One moment the giants are there, and the next, we only hear echoes. What cosmic twist ended their age of monsters? Picture the sky bathed in a sepia light, tinted by immense ferns and heavy with humidity. We are at the dawn of the Carboniferous period, roughly 358 million years ago, as the supercontinent Pangaea begins to form. The air is different. Oxygen levels hover around 35%, nearly double our modern 21%. Breathing, that would be like inhaling pure oxygen through a fire hose. For us, it might cause oxygen poisoning. But for some swamp-dwelling arthropods, these conditions were paradise. Creatures like Arthropleura, a distant cousin of today's centipedes, could reach nearly 10 feet long. In the skies, Meganeura dragonflies with wingspans almost 2 feet wide ruled the air. Every gulp of that rich oxygen made them feel invincible. Life was supercharged. Lightning storms were relentless. Every bolt could set an immense forest ablaze. In a world with so much oxygen, the air itself was a giant tinderbox. Modern forests might survive a thunderstorm, but Carboniferous forests went up in flames almost daily. Hazy smoke hung low, painting the sky in burnt orange streaks like an eternal sunset. For us, it would be like living under a fireworks display on loop. Even with all this chaos, the giants endured, feeding and reproducing, as if nothing could touch them. Only when the infernos eased did the titans vanish. Was it coincidence or something more sinister? Today, scientists play detective with these clues, piecing together evidence from rocks and fossils worldwide. Think of it like a deep-time whodunit. Multiple suspects, but no confession in sight. In the 19th century, paleontologists first uncovered enormous insect fossils locked in stone, but the cause of their disappearance remained a mystery. Over a century later, new fossils and high-tech tools are opening more chapters of the story. We now suspect that predators, wild climate shifts, and even ancient parasites might have played roles. It's a global game of Clue. Did a change in the atmosphere do in these giants? Dream? Or were they ambushed by something lurking in the swamps? Was there a single culprit, like a dominant predator? Or did many factors combine into a perfect storm? The scientific detectives don't have a smoking gun yet, which means the mystery stays unsolved and thrilling. In a disused coal mine in Commentry, France, miners in the late 1800s uncovered fossils of giants. They dug through layers of ancient pond mud, each slab revealing wildlife from 350 million years ago. On one stone, an enormous dragonfly outline appeared, with wings stretching almost 2 feet across. These fossils were unique treasures, the first glimpse of Meganeura. Only 5 specimens like these have ever been found, making each one a rare window into a vanished world. Local miners sometimes cracked them in two as they chipped for coal. In one case, A huge wing was chipped away by a pickaxe, and a dragonfly lost its head. Imagine the excitement and frustration. A prehistoric giant staring us right in the eye, nearly complete, but its head gone forever. It's like finding half a portrait and never knowing the rest of the face. Each fossil feels like a ghost, alive with secrets, yet silent about the rest. Today, museum drawers hold these wonders, and the giant insects Meganeura hunted. One display shows a Meganeura fossil with its long, spiny legs splayed as if in mid-capture. These legs were like barbed tridents used to snag prey. Around it, the crushed bodies of its victims, giant 2-foot-long insects, hint at an arms race in the canopy. Picture a dragonfly swooping down to snatch a cockroach the size of a sandwich. In the Carboniferous era, Meganeura had no bird or bat to worry about. It ruled the sky. Meganeura's body was built like a flying fighter jet. 4 wings, 2 on each side, attached to a sturdy thorax, gave it incredible agility. In front, a head with enormous compound eyes let it see almost all the way around, even maybe behind itself. It could spot prey from any angle. Zipping through the swamp at up to 40 miles an hour, it might have banked and hovered like a hunting helicopter. Its appetite was legendary. Some scientists estimate it needed to eat its own weight in insects every half hour. It was on a never-ending diet plan. The secret to Meganeura's size lies in how insects breathe. Unlike us, it had no lungs. Tiny tubes called tracheae ran through its body like a network of straws, delivering oxygen directly to muscles and organs. The system works fine for little bugs, but it struggles when bugs get huge. Imagine trying to inflate a balloon by breathing through a long straw. Eventually, you run out of breath. In the Carboniferous, however, the atmosphere was so rich in oxygen that those tubes could easily carry enough air to feed a giant body. To test how insect breathing really works, scientists have peered inside living bugs with powerful X-rays. In Illinois, at the Argonne National Laboratory, researchers placed a live cricket inside one of the world's brightest X-ray beams. It was like a high-tech MRI scan for an insect. They could literally watch the cricket breathe. Inside its body, a tiny bubble of air pulsed back and forth as muscles contracted, actively pumping oxygen. The cricket wasn't just passively sitting there. It was forcing air through its body with every muscle flex, like a tiny pump. What this showed is that bigger insects need to devote more and more of their insides to breathing. It's like trying to fit 15 water balloons inside a football without bursting it. In the Carboniferous, Meganeura and Arthropleura could afford that extra infrastructure because the air was thick with oxygen. When oxygen later fell, around 290 million years ago, during the Permian, they literally ran out of breathing room. Evolution left them with a stark choice: shrink or vanish. Now imagine a tiny fungus hiding on tree bark. It seems harmless, yet it played a villainous role. In the late Carboniferous, a new fungus evolved that could efficiently digest wood. It secreted enzymes that broke down dead trees faster than ever. Instead of dead wood piling up into peat and coal, locking carbon underground, this fungus blew the carbon back into the atmosphere as carbon dioxide. Little by little, less carbon stayed buried. Oxygen levels began to fall from their Carboniferous highs. It was like the world's largest furnace switching off its oxygen supply. On a muddy hillside in Autun, France, paleontologists found something extraordinary. 2 parallel trails pressed into rock, each 3 feet apart. These tracks were made not by humans, but by Arthropleura, a monstrous centipede relative nearly 10 feet long. Gazing at those grooves, one can almost sense the beast's legs churning the mud as it walked. Nearby, smaller impressions show where babies once crawled. Over time, they would grow into giants and leave ever-widening trails behind them. Arthropleura ambled through Carboniferous rainforests as large as a bus. It ate plants and fallen wood, not meat. Nighttime predators like the amphibian Ichthyostega may have tried to snack on it, sensing its movement through the bark. But Arthropleura was armored. Its body was covered with tough, overlapping plates, and its legs ended in claws that could grip bark like Velcro. It was a gentle giant on legs, basically a tank crawling through the ferns. But even tanks run out of fuel. Over millions of years, Earth's climate and ecosystems changed. Pangaea's interior sweltered in heat by day and froze at night. Monsoons drenched the coasts, while deserts sprawled inland. The lush ferns, horsetails, and club mosses that Arthropleura munched on started to disappear. Fossils even show fragments of its last meals, pieces of ancient leaves still in its gut. We never find Arthropleura fossils younger than about 280 million years. With no buffet left, Arthropleura had to fade. There was no single catastrophe, just a slow suffocation. The giant centipedes simply starved as their world dried up. By the end of the Permian, the last of the Carboniferous Giants had vanished. There were no dwarfs or newcomers taking their place, just an empty stage. All that remain of these titans are their footprints in mudstone and bones in museum displays. It makes us wonder, millions of years from now, what story will fossils of us tell? Will humanity itself seem as fragile to future detectives of deep time as these creatures seem to us? Which clues are we leaving behind in the rock layers of tomorrow? Picture a sun-baked Permian landscape in southern France. The ground is a crust of rust-red rock, as if the earth itself is turning to iron. Underfoot, the air is still and heavy, carrying a dusty tang of minerals. Somewhere just beyond the horizon, the Mediterranean sparkles like a distant promise. Now imagine a creature buzzing above you, with wings spanning almost 2 feet wide. It sounds like science fiction. In 2009, however, paleontologists found just such a wing on a dusty slope near the French Riviera. At first, researchers were as stunned as someone watching a T-Rex try to open a revolving door. Surprising, and a bit funny. Here in the red rock, a fossil wing, bigger than your arm, appeared. Its veins and membranes are preserved in stone, like a natural photograph. The team had expected only small, ordinary insects, so finding this giant felt as impossible as a penguin ordering coffee at a drive-thru. This discovery flipped everything on its head. It whispered a question. How could a dragonfly so huge live when oxygen in the air was fading? If shrinking oxygen was supposed to shrink life, what forces were at play in this old world? The mysteries of this wing set the stage for a journey through ancient skies and swamps. In the warm, red dust of that hillside, history was hiding in plain sight. What other secrets do these ancient wings hold about surviving under a thinning sky? Here at the excavation site, the air shimmers, baked dry by the sun. Paleontologist Andre Nell stands knee-deep in red sediment, peering at a slab of stone. The landscape around him is a rust-colored canvas. He quips that everything here looks painted by iron oxide. Less than an hour from today's Mediterranean coast, it feels more like another planet. But in the Permian, this land was no desert. Heavy rains flooded it in seasons, creating swamps and river forests. Limestone and mudstone layers stacked over millions of years, preserving traces of lush life. Yet fossils are frustratingly scarce. Worldwide, teams have only found about a dozen or so similar sites, each yielding scraps of plants or bones. Nell notes that the rocks here formed about 250 million years ago. They call it the Red Permian because the iron in the sediment rusted bright red over time. It's rich in signs of life. Plant roots and burrows crisscross the stone like a secret code. But visible fossils are few. He brushes away dust to reveal the tiny imprint of a fern leaf. This place has kept many of its secrets hidden, but every now and then, something extraordinary turns up. For decades, researchers thought giant dragonflies disappeared by this age. Now, fragments of wings prove otherwise. They found wings as small as those of modern insects, and others as huge as those ancient Carboniferous monsters. If such giants swarmed these humid Permian skies, it means the story is more complicated than we thought. Which brings us back to our question. In a world with thinning air, how were these giants still buzzing? Back in the lab, the treasures from that French dig spread out on tables. Tiny, delicate wings lie beside massive fragments, all of them chalky gray under the bright lights. Some fossils are almost no larger than a modern butterfly's wing. Others are staggering. One rear wing fragment alone stretches nearly a foot across. Restored to full size, it hints at a dragonfly with nearly a 2-foot wingspan, rivaling the giants of the Carboniferous. It's like finding a hummingbird and a hawk in one aviary. Paleontologists like Andre Nell sift through each piece, marveling at the variety. One drawer might hold a fragile wing as thin as parchment. Another has a chunk of wing that once made the size of a weather vane. Here was clear evidence. In one late Permian sky, dragonflies, the size of today's insects, flew alongside titans of their family. If oxygen was dwindling, why weren't the big ones gone? The fossils didn't follow the expected pattern at all. Now shift your eyes across Pangaea to what is now Texas. In the middle Permian world, this too was a steamy jungle of palms and horsetail trees. The air was thick and humid, nearly dripping with moisture. In 1937, a fossil hunter sifting through siltstone near Caney City pulled out a jaw-dropping relic, a dragonfly wing as big as a man's forearm. The creature, named Meganeura, was built like its French cousin, nearly 2 feet in wingspan. Texas looks nothing like this today, but in the Permian, it was lush with conifers and ancient ferns. Oxygen only a bit above modern levels. How could an insect this enormous flutter in air with less oxygen than its Carboniferous ancestor had? Professor Michael Engel, a leading paleoentomologist, offers a clue. Even the largest insects alive today, the biggest moths or stick insects, pale in comparison. Engel highlights a key advantage: flight. Each downbeat of Meganeura massive wings would compress its body like bellows, pumping fresh air through every tube inside. In effect, the wings became part of its breathing apparatus. A flying dragonfly constantly draws in oxygen, whereas a ground-bound bug must wait as air slowly diffuses. This built-in ventilation might have kept the giant's muscles fed. In other words, Meganeura essentially breathed harder by flying. Through powerful, relentless wing beats, it could whisk oxygen into its tissues, even as the atmosphere thinned. Flight wasn't just motion. It was survival. Thanks to this trick, a nearly 2-foot wide dragonfly could stay aloft in a sky where others would suffocate. Below the canopy, on a misty Permian morning, A bulky amphibian known as Ophiocodon lurks at the edge of a swamp. The air smells of damp earth, ancient ferns, and algae. Suddenly, a giant dragonfly named Meganeura sweeps into view above the water. Its broad, translucent wings beat with a soft drumming whir, casting a flickering shadow on the green pond. With a wingspan nearly 2 feet across, it's impossible to miss. The amphibian's bulging eyes flare wide, and its stomach growls at the sight. But thanks to the dragonfly's keen vision, it spots the lungfish at the same instant. Those compound eyes can pick up the slightest movement in the reeds from yards away. In a heartbeat, the dragonfly zips aside, jerking skyward, entirely out of reach of snapping jaws. On its turf, the dragonfly is champion. Nearby, the sharp crackle of distant vegetation only reminds it that other predators might be lurking, but none could touch such a giant. The Permian swamp falls momentarily silent after it passes. By now, the giant ground bugs of the Carboniferous had vanished, but these airborne leviathans still reigned supreme. They ruled the Permian swamps and skies, darting through the treetops like hawks over a wetland. This scene feels like a moment from a prehistoric nature film. The dragonfly skims through the canopy. The lungfish lunges. Then the dragonfly effortlessly spirals away. If a creature this powerful can evade danger so easily, what could ever threaten it? The horizon was shifting. New challengers were about to enter the sky. Imagine scrambling up a fern-covered tree around 250 million years ago. A creature the size of a modern flying squirrel grabs a branch, then push off. With outstretched limbs, it soars between the trunks. This lithe reptile is Coelurosaurus, one of the earliest gliders in Earth's history. At only about 16 inches long, it is dwarfed by the sky's giants, but every detail speaks of a life among the treetops. Its triangular skull carries rows of small, sharp teeth, perfect for biting into hard exoskeletons. Thin, rib-like bones extend along its sides, forming broad, wing-like flaps of skin. It's like a tiny lizard with a paper airplane strapped to its ribs. Professor Steyer holds the fossil in hand. Delicate claws, the impressions of wings, the long tail that helped balance. We can picture it climbing a tall tree and then leaping into the air. It would glide gracefully, banking between tree trunks to snap up a flying insect. It might not snatch a giant dragonfly off the wing. Those would still dart out of reach. But Coelurosaurus could ambush smaller bugs in the canopy. Suddenly, the Permian world had new hunters. Four-legged gliders scanning the air from above. Could even a creature like this tip the balance for those giant dragonflies? The next act of this story is about to begin. It's a snapshot of change. These Permian forests now host little parachuting lizards, creatures that leap and glide in search of prey. The very existence of gliders suggests that the Permian skies were becoming more contested. So Coelurosaurus slices through the air on leathery wings, a new kind of predator. The stage is set for a clash of sky titans. Even the dragonflies must have felt the strain. Could this gliding lizard help end the reign of the giants? The story is about to unfold. By the Triassic, around 230 million years ago, the sky itself began to change dramatically. For the first time, a family of reptiles mastered true flight. These were the Pterosaurs, creatures with hollow bones and membranes stretching from finger to ankle, from the tip of a long wing to their leg. Some were tiny, with wingspans of less than a foot. Others had wingspans as big as small planes that coexisted with early dinosaurs and soared over warm coastal waters. Imagine standing on a rocky bluff and seeing dozens of these creatures wheel overhead like an alien air show. Yet despite their variety, very few were insect eaters. The smallest pterosaurs, like the anaerognathids, were essentially like tiny bats at night, flapping through forests, snapping up moths and beetles. The giants, with 15 to 50-foot wingspans, probably dined on fish or scavenged. Some scientists at first wondered, could any pterosaur be a dragonfly hunter? Frankly, it would be comical. Picturing a 15-foot flying lizard zooming after a dragonfly is like a jumbo jet chasing a hummingbird. Professor Eberhard Frey, a world expert on these flyers, suggests the odds were slim. Of about 100 known pterosaur species, only the smallest had the right wings and agility for catching insects on the wing. The rest likely chased other prey in the skies or seas. Essentially, these big flyers stayed out of the dragonfly market. Pterosaurs had conquered the sky in numbers, but they were not great competitors for giant insects. The dragonflies retained the upper hand. For now. By the Triassic, about 230 million years ago, pterosaurs had spread around the globe, over Europe, what would become South America, and into Asia. For the first time, a family of vertebrates mastered powered flight. Tiny ones flapped through forests like bizarre bats, while others soared overhead with wings far larger than any bird we know. One of the small flyers was Anaerognathus, discovered in Germany. Picture a creature no bigger than a modern owl. Big, round eyes, a wide, flat skull, and a wing membrane stretching from fingers to ankles. It likely hunted insects at dusk and dawn, scanning the treetops below. In Asia, its cousin, Batrachognathus, was similar, a furry little reptile with huge eyes and a frog-like mouth. Its jaws opened wide like a parachute, lined with a dozen needle teeth, ready to snap on any prey that buzzed by. Imagine a gliding bullfrog with wings. No flying insect could hide from jaws like that. Even a massive calligramma with a 10-inch wingspan would stand out. These pterosaurs added new eyes and mouths to the Permian sky, but they mostly hunted small creatures. The giant dragonflies still ruled the big prey. Each new flyer did not immediately oust them, yet the competition was growing. The world was gearing up for an aerial showdown. What fate awaited these titans of the Permian sky? Today, paleontologists sometimes turn to wind tunnels rather than fossils to study flight. In a German lab, Dr. Dino Frey and colleagues built a detailed carbon fiber model of Anaerognathus and placed it before a giant fan. The tunnel, typically used for airplanes, became a pterosaur testing ground. Researchers cranked up the wind to around 40 kilometers per hour. The model's response was telling. These flappy flyers were relatively slow and could not glide well. They had to beat their wings continuously just to stay aloft. In effect, pterosaurs like Anaerognathus flew like big insects themselves, constantly flapping to maintain lift. This active flight made them surprisingly maneuverable, allowing quick turns and bursts of speed. They could chase agile prey in a way that the earlier gliders could not. Indeed, a gliding Coelurosaurus couldn't match the agility of a truly flying pterosaur. When these creatures took to the air, insects lost their monopoly on flapping flight. Yet even this new aerial army did not immediately eradicate the giants. The huge dragonflies still flourished, their wings still beating in those ancient skies. But every new flyer was another piece on the chessboard. The question hung in the balance. Would this competition finally snuff out the giants, or was there more to the story? Meanwhile, far from the field sites, scientists were crunching numbers. Dr. Matthew Clapham at the University of California gathered data on nearly 10,000 fossilized insects, literally measuring every known wing from scientific papers. He he spotted a long-term trend. Whenever atmospheric oxygen was high, insects got bigger. When it dropped, they got smaller. This pattern held for 200 million years, from the early Carboniferous through the Permian. But then, something changed. Around the late Jurassic, roughly 150 million years ago, insects began to shrink, even as oxygen levels ticked upward. Clapham noticed that this shift coincided with an important event: the appearance of birds. Feathered dinosaurs like Anchiornis were learning to fly from the treetops. Forests of tall conifers offered a launch pad, and suddenly, a new type of predator took to the air. These early birds were small, agile, and hungry for insects. Once flying ancestors of birds became common, the largest insects were at a disadvantage. A big dragonfly lumbering through the air would stand out in the sight of a bird of prey. In effect, by evolving wings of their own, birds put a new kind of pressure on the insect world. Suddenly, being huge was dangerous. Clapham's numbers told a clear story. After this point, big dragonflies never bounced back to their former glory. Insects' upward size trend had flatlined, apparently under threat from this new arms race. The ancient insect lords lost their crown, not just to climate change or fewer clouds of oxygen, but to those with feathers and talons. The Cretaceous sky was no longer theirs alone. So, were the wings of birds the final nail in the coffin? Or did one more twist await in this long tale of giants and Goliaths? In a muddy lakebed in Liaoning, China, a remarkable discovery was made. Fossilized plants from about 125 million years ago were preserved in volcanic ash, including the world's oldest known flowers. Paleobotanist Sun shows a delicate seed pod called Archaeopteryx. Under the microscope, you can see wispy male stamens and a central female pistil. Proof this is a true flowering plant. These flowers drifted on lake shores, rooted in shallow water. It seems an unlikely link to insects, but these blossoming plants changed freshwater ecosystems. Like modern water lilies, Archaeopteryx grew in ponds. Each season it would produce soft petals and leaves that later withered and sank. The decaying plant material fueled microbial blooms on the lake bottom. The microbes voraciously consumed oxygen in the water as they ate the flowers and fruit. In essence, the first flowers sucked the life-giving oxygen out of the water. For dragonfly larvae, this was deadly. These insects begin life underwater, breathing through gills. Suddenly, their nurseries filled with plant debris and starving bacteria, choking out the oxygen. No matter how tough a giant dragonfly was in the air, its babies could not survive in such poisoned pools. The ancient ecosystem shifted. By the time these flowers spread, large-bodied dragonflies had dwindled to none. Nature had dealt a final blow to the giants of the Permian air with something as gentle as a flower. It is a haunting thought. Beauty beneath the surface helped seal the fate of a lineage that once dominated the skies. Today, in the early 21st century, the titans of the insect world are tiny by comparison. The largest insects alive are about the size of a human hand. One example is a Chinese stick insect with a body nearly a foot long and a leg span even larger. These giants mostly live in tropical forests, where their long antennae and wings camouflage against leaves. But even these have become rare. As one entomologist put it, we now stand at the dawn of a new extinction phase, driven by human activity. The same tropical forests that shelter these giants are under threat from deforestation, climate change, and development. If the woodlands that harbor a giant stick insect are destroyed, the creature has nowhere to go. It's only sensible to worry that history might rhyme. Today's giants could vanish, just as those of the Permian did. We have seen how subtle shifts in oxygen levels, predators, or plants can cause great creatures to disappear over time. In a way, we have become agents of change in the same geological story. A century from now, will curious naturalists be scratching through museum drawers or rainforests to find a fossil or photograph of these giants, saying, "They once roamed the earth, and we let them fade away"? Imagine discovering your backyard robin's ancestors once walked among dinosaurs. For decades, scientists wondered exactly that. The family tree seemed to end with a single famous fossil from 19th century Germany. Archaeopteryx means ancient wing, but it was only the beginning. Then, in the mid-1990s, thousands of new fossils unearthed in China exploded the story. Feathers turned out to be not rare, but everywhere. Some of these dinosaurs even took to the sky. It's almost as if Tyrannosaurus rex had put on a feather boa for a night out. Suddenly, we see modern birds as distant cousins of remarkable prehistoric creatures. If the world was far more feathery than we ever imagined, what other secrets might this tell us about evolution? Picture the Jurassic world as a giant jigsaw puzzle. About 200 million years ago, Pangaea was tearing apart. China and Siberia became a single huge peninsula stretching into a warm ocean. Imagine wandering those lands. A temperate climate much like modern Europe, but teeming with strange creatures. The air was thick with volcanic ash from eruptions that rocked the land. In that wonderland walked Anchiornis, literally near bird, no larger than a pigeon, covered from head to toe in feathers. It looked like a crow-sized dinosaur wearing a fluffy jacket. Nearby was Guanlong, a 3-meter predator weighing about 50 kilograms, who also boasted feathers. Both could dart through the forest canopy with a whisper of wing beats. If even small hunters took to the air with feathers, what did those plumes do for them? One minute, a forest teems with dinosaurs. The next, an eruption covers it in ash, pausing Jurassic life. In northeast China, volcanoes did just that, creating what paleontologists call a feathered dinosaur Pompeii. Thousands of creatures were buried in layers of clay and ash, frozen forever in astonishing detail. Over 2 decades of digging in Liaoning have unearthed these perfect fossils by the thousands. Mud and ash sealed entire animals intact, even preserving delicate feathers and sometimes skin impressions. Paleontologists kneel in the field, boots sinking into cool clay, brushstroke by brushstroke, revealing pristine skeletons and wings. Back in the lab, scientists gently dust each find, breathing in the faint smell of ancient bone. Researchers from around the world travel here for these trophies. Like detectives, they study each fossil clue to piece together the origin of flight. What might these time capsules teach us about how dinosaurs first took to the air? Imagine a sky ruled by dragons. For 80 million years, pterosaurs were the undisputed masters of the air. These first flying vertebrates had wings of stretched skin, spanning elongated fingers, powerful muscles, and hollow bones built for gliding. Think of Germanodactylus and relatives soaring over late Jurassic islands in what is now Germany. They were not dinosaurs, just giant gliders that ruled the prehistoric skies. Then came the first birds. Archaeopteryx, the ancient wing, showed up on those islands with feathers and even claws at its wingtips, a body part completely alien to modern flyers. This feathered dinosaur with teeth in its jaws turned the heavens upside down. If leathery-winged pterosaurs had the sky, what happened when birds took off? Imagine peeling open a stone book. In Bavaria's Solnhofen limestone, death in lagoons left fossils perfectly preserved. Toward the end of the Jurassic, the region was a tropical archipelago of salty lagoons. Creatures that died here sank into quiet, anoxic mud. No scavengers, just gentle burial in rock. Archaeopteryx was one such find, its skeleton caught in ultra-fine layers of sediment. The stone is so finely grained that you can actually see the layers stacking one atop another. Quarry workers use these slabs to tile houses, inadvertently uncovering highly prized fossils. In this way, the famous feathered skeleton of Archaeopteryx finally came to light. If each layer of rock holds a secret, what might the next reveal about that ancient lagoon? Imagine being the first person to hold Archaeopteryx in your hands. In 1868, British anatomist Thomas Henry Huxley did just that. He stared at a fossil that was at once utterly familiar and utterly strange. A small creature with feathers like a bird, yet teeth and claws like a dinosaur. Huxley realized this was a transitional form. He declared Archaeopteryx a missing link between reptiles and birds, direct evidence of evolution. A friend of Charles Darwin and a keen fossil expert, Huxley noted those wing claws and the long, bony tail, features identical to small carnivorous dinosaurs. Suddenly, a chicken-sized predator had hopped out of the trees to upend the textbooks. If nature had built a bridge from dinosaurs to birds, what new paths would it carve next? Archaeopteryx was hardly the acrobatic flyer its feathers might suggest. In many ways, it still looked like a dinosaur, a small one, wearing a feather coat. It had teeth, claws on its wings, and a long, bony tail. It probably waddled more than it soared, but crucially, its collarbones had fused into a strong wishbone, an upgrade that helped its wings flap. Archaeopteryx could flutter and glide short distances, but it remained a very clumsy flyer. Imagine a little dinosaur in a bird costume, bumping its way through the trees. If this tiny bird wasn't a true aerial ace, what was the point of its wings? And which creature would take to the air next? More than 150 years later, Archaeopteryx still has surprises. In 2011, specimen 11 turned up, fragmentary, but showing something new. It had a fan of tail feathers spread into a V shape and long tufts of feathers draped down its legs. Basically, this Jurassic bird was wearing leg warmers. That's odd. Modern birds don't keep their feet covered like that. Paleontologists didn't expect this detail, and it raises questions. If evolution had the chance to trim off these extra adornments, why would Archaeopteryx still sport them? What could this mean for our understanding of bird origins? Even dinosaurs had dinner dramas. One day, a giant marine reptile washed up on the lagoon's shore, a feast for any creature. Archaeopteryx rushed in to peck at the carcass. It was like stumbling on a dinosaur version of roadkill with no effort required. But danger lurked nearby. Drawn by the scent of meat, a small predator appeared. Think an early dog-like mammal skulking in the mud. Suddenly our bird was not just a hunter, but potentially prey. In that moment, who was the hunter? And who was hunted? Pterosaurs once ruled the skies. By 65 million years ago, not a single one remained. Their era was over, and the night sky was silent of flapping reptile wings. In their place, birds took flight and began to multiply. In effect, birds got extra lives as a massive impact wiped out their flying reptile cousins. For a long time, the idea that birds descended from dinosaurs was shelved. Those giant reptile flyers had dominated 80 million years of history, and the big question sank into the background. That is, until the late 20th century. Suddenly, a new chapter opened with discoveries in Asia that linked birds firmly back to their dinosaur relatives. If pterosaurs bowed out at the end of one chapter of history, what new chapter was just beginning? Imagine digging in a cornfield and turning up a fluffy dinosaur. In Liaoning, China, that became reality. In Liaoning, China, that became reality. In 1993, farmers uncovered a remarkable fossil bed beneath fields of corn. Layers of gray mud alternated with red volcanic ash, preserving creatures for millions of years. The star find in 1996 was Sinosauropteryx, a small meat-eating dinosaur coated in downy feathers. It was astonishing. The little creature was practically dressed like a furry chick. Paleontologists had long suspected some dinosaurs might wear feathers, but now the evidence was in hand. Sinosauropteryx belonged to the theropod family of predators, with a long tail tipped in fluffy plumage. It even had zigzag stripes along its tail. If dinosaurs like this looked so bird-like, what did that mean for the entire dinosaur family tree? If dinosaurs like this looked so bird-like, what did that mean for the entire dinosaur family tree? Could a dinosaur have stripes? In 2010, researchers discovered that Sinosauropteryx could. Microscopic cells called melanosomes in its feathers showed colors from the ancient past. Under the microscope, scientists spotted round cells for brown pigment and slender ones for gray. The result? This dinosaur was a reddish-brown with lighter stripes down its tail, like a squirrel with dino rust fur. This was more than a fun fact. The presence of melanosomes meant those fluffy filaments were actual feathers, not something else. For the first time, we could confidently say exactly what color a dinosaur was. If we can read the colors of these ancient creatures, what other hidden details might their fossils reveal? Could a single tooth tell us about the weather? It turns out it can. Could a single tooth tell us about the weather? It turns out it can. Scientists examined oxygen isotopes locked in the tooth enamel, essentially tasting the water the dinosaur drank. Scientists examined oxygen isotopes locked in the tooth enamel, essentially tasting the water the dinosaur drank. The result startled everyone. Scientists examined oxygen isotopes locked in the tooth enamel, essentially tasting the water the dinosaur drank. The result startled everyone. It was about as cold as present-day northern France, with bitter winters and even snow. Imagine dinosaurs trudging through pine forests in icy wind. For Liaoning dinosaurs, feathers were built-in winter coats, not just decoration. For Liaoning dinosaurs, feathers were built-in winter coats, not just decoration. They were wearing natural down jackets as they foraged. If dinosaurs knew to pack such jackets, what else do their fossils tell us about surviving this icy world? Then came Eutyrannus, the feathered tyrant. This huge predator weighed around 1.5 tons, close to a T-Rex. To everyone's astonishment, its body was covered in long, downy feathers. It was like finding a 6-ton chicken strolling through the forest. Traditional wisdom said big animals needed less insulation, but here was a dinosaur far bigger than an elephant, wearing a thick plumage. The fact that such a large, warm-blooded animal was covered in feathers suggests that body size alone wasn't enough to stay warm. The climate must have been brutally cold. The discovery of the largest feathered animal ever found confirmed the hypothesis of harsh winters in Liaoning. It proved that tiny Sinosauropteryx and giant Eutyrannus both braved snow and cold, shielded by their feathery coats. If even the largest dinosaur needed a coat, what does that say about the world they lived in? Then there was Archaeopteryx, literally tail feather. About 2 meters long, it was a sleek, two-legged dinosaur with a short tail. Its arms and tail bore large, stiff feathers, beautiful and symmetrical, but useless for flying. Scientists think these feathers were purely ornamental, used in courtship displays. In fact, male Archaeopteryx had longer display feathers than females, indicating a mating ritual. It was as if evolution had designed flamboyant costumes for these dinosaurs. If natural selection was playing with fashion before flight, what drove these dinosaurs to wear such extravagant plumage? But these were only early feathers. In Archaeopteryx's time, feathers began as a single filament that split into a fluffy pom-pom of downy barbs. These structures were symmetrical and hollow, allowing air to pass through easily. Not at all like rigid wings. At this stage, the little dinosaur was more insulation than airplane. It remained a ground runner, like a bird wearing an almost transparent down jacket. Its hind legs did the work. So what was the purpose of these primitive feathers? If they were not yet wings, were they just stylish accessories for a sprinting dino? Then the feather that changed everything was found. In 2000, Chuang discovered a fossil that changed everything. This dinosaur had wings, and not just any wings. Its feathers were highly asymmetrical, just like those of modern flying birds. In other words, it had real flight feathers. This was proof that some dinosaurs could truly fly. The species Microraptor was the most amazing discovery. A small theropod with long, flat feathers on both its arms and its legs, essentially 4 wings. Picture a dinosaur with sleeves on all 4 limbs, gliding like a dragonfly. Suddenly, a tiny feathered flyer was no longer a dream. Could this strange 4-winged glider be the missing link to powered flight? Microraptor's home was a Cretaceous jungle of tall trees rooted in volcanic soil. About 125 million years ago, ash from eruptions fertilized the land, making forests explode with ferns and conifers. Here, Microraptor thrived. It was literally small thief, a cat-sized predator with feathers on all 4 limbs, giving it 4 wings. With those wings, it probably launched itself from tree to tree, like a flying squirrel on steroids. On the ground, Microraptor was clumsy. Its long flight feathers got in the way of walking. Without trees, it might as well have been hoping to fly on flat ground. If climbing and gliding among the branches were its lifeline, could this dino be the true pioneer of flight? Now meet Confuciusornis. In a museum far from Liaoning, an ornithologist faced hundreds of these little birds. Over 500 specimens were piled in drawers, essentially an extinct aviary on display. These birds were slightly younger than Archaeopteryx, but far more modern. They had lost their teeth and long, bony tails, and even possessed a furcula, the famous wishbone, just like ours. Some males also had 2 long, ribbon-like tail feathers. It was as if evolution had given them fancy tail streamers for display. These clawed-winged birds could perch on branches. A reversed first toe allowed them to grip like modern perching birds. If so many of them lived side by side, how were they all related? Confuciusornis's wings weren't built for gliding either. They were narrow and delicate, better for fast flapping than long glides. Think of a fledgling bird struggling to take off from the ground. Each wing beat was jerky, carrying it only in short hops. Natural selection retained only the most effective flyers, so each generation got a little better at flight. Yet the presence of so many bird fossils with dinosaurs puzzles scientists. If birds had already diversified by that time, were these feathered dinosaurs just curious side notes in evolution? How do we untangle which ancestors led to modern birds? All these discoveries raise new questions. Just because many birds and feathered dinosaurs coexisted 125 million years ago doesn't mean they share a direct ancestor. Perhaps birds had already branched off by then, and giants like Utaranus were evolutionary side roads. In this tangled family tree, which branch led to our modern birds? When did the first true bird appear? The last card was a shocker. A Jurassic enantiornithine from West Liaoning, uncovered in 2009 during a motorway dig. This little four-winged dinosaur lived around 160 million years ago, at least 15 million years before Archaeopteryx. It rewrote the timeline. If Archaeopteryx was the earliest known bird at 145 million years, here was proof that feathered dinosaurs flew much earlier. It was like unearthing a forgotten first chapter in the book of bird origins. With this fossil, the debate was settled. Feathered dinosaurs were older than the first birds. Tiny enantiornithines lived in a dangerous world. Jurassic skies were patrolled by pterosaurs like Darwinopterus, enormous flyers with meter-wide wings, effectively the hawks of their era. Faced with these predators, our little dinosaur's only refuge was between ground and sky. The trees. It would perch or glide down into the underbrush to feed. On the ground, its lengthy leg feathers were a hindrance. Its long, sprinting legs helped it dash for cover. If you were a bird-sized dinosaur in a jungle of giants, how would you survive? One last mystery remained. Why did some dinosaurs have wings on their legs? The rare enantiornithine fossil shows plumage on the rear legs. Scientists have debated this. Were these leg wings used in gliding flight or merely decorative? X-rays of the skeleton show how the feathers attached. Some experts argue these extra wings helped stabilize glides, like small flaps under the hips, while others think they were display, not really for flying. Either way, dinosaur flight appears to have been a trial and error process. With each discovery, we find more questions about how dinosaurs experimented with the sky, and so the story of feathers and flight goes on. Each new fossil page seems to rewrite our place in Earth's history. After hundreds of millions of years of trial and error, we finally have birds, the heirs of dinosaurs. What comes next? Could there be other branches of life waiting to sprout wings? If the fates of giants turned on the slimmest threads of feathers, what does that say about the thin line on which our own lives hang? What secrets still lie buried in time, waiting for someone to unearth them? A frozen Siberian hillside cracks open centuries of silence to reveal something extraordinary. Feathers from the age of dinosaurs emerging from the rock. It's the summer of 2013, and even midday heat carries a chill across the Trans-Baikal steppe. 1,500 kilometers north of Beijing, local geologists are lifting bones from the soil from above, following earlier Russian finds. They invite Pascal Godefroy, a dinosaur detective from Belgium, To help uncover the story, pile after pile of sediment is carefully brushed away, dust settling over their boots and in the air. From the excavation pit, fine filaments cling to the stone. They are delicate threads of dinosaur down, frozen in place. Imagine lifting a dusty boot and noticing fluffy Jurassic tumbleweeds stuck on the tread. We're on the verge of something unbelievable. A buried secret whispering across deep time. Why would feathers lie here? And who left them behind millions of years ago? Pascal and his team spend days carefully clearing the site. Spade by spade, they remove layers of soil a meter deep, revealing Jurassic secrets. At last, something extraordinary comes into view. At the edge of a sediment slab, thin filaments spread out, casting tiny shadows in the sun. These are feathers, downy, composite filaments converging at a tiny base, forming one of the earliest known feathers in dinosaur history. The hills around us date to the Jurassic, about 150 million years old. Back then, Siberia was a place of extremes, searing summers, frigid winters, and volcanoes that painted the sky red with ash. For the dinosaurs that roamed here, survival was a daily struggle. But for us, each careful brushstroke reveals another piece of the puzzle. Why does this tiny dinosaur down still lie buried in Siberia? What can it tell us about the age when dinosaurs ruled the world? Imagine wandering into a dinosaur graveyard. Everywhere you look, bones lie scattered. Tiny tibias, large tibias, little femurs, a jigsaw puzzle of skeleton parts. It's like a sloppy laundry day from prehistory, with their jackets streaked in Jurassic clay as well. Needles and twigs crack underfoot with each careful step, reminders of the conifer forests long vanished. Somehow every sock belongs to the same giant dinosaur. Pascal and his team sift through the debris. They notice something incredible. All those mismatched bones fit a single story. Each bone, big or small, has the same design, like they all sprang from the same blueprint. One by one, the fossil fragments fall into place. They give their new discovery a name: Coelindodromeus, the Coelinda runner. This little dinosaur turns out to have been surprisingly small and slim, about the size of a kangaroo, moving with surprising grace. Coelindodromeus was a plant eater, and it wore feathers. At first, scientists even thought those feathers belonged to a bird, and the scales to a reptile. But each bone and filament fit into a single puzzle. All came from one surprising dinosaur. Imagine a flock of feathered herbivores migrating across the prehistoric steppe. Hundreds of Coelindodromeus might have marched through volcanic ash and fern forests, while predators like Sinraptor lurked in the shadows. This is a revolution. Not only meat-eaters, but even plant-eating dinosaurs could have sported plumage. Coelindodromeus is a new branch on the dinosaur family tree, separate from the Tyrannosaurus rex and Velociraptor lines, with feathers. It suggests that feathers might not have been just a fluke of carnivores. For us, this means rethinking everything we knew about dinosaurs and their feathers. Maybe every dinosaur had a little downy coat. If feathers reach back to the dawn of dinosaurs, some ancestor from the Triassic might have been the first feather bringer. Could the true first feathered dinosaur still be buried, waiting for us to uncover it? Imagine a fossil rewriting the rule book of prehistory. A mammal the size of a wolf lies perfectly preserved in volcanic ash, jaws clenched around a small dinosaur. Picture your family dog locked in a staring contest with a baby dinosaur. This is exactly the scene, frozen in time. For decades, scientists assumed all dinosaur-era mammals were as tiny as mice or shrews, scuttling in the shadows and only flourishing after the giants vanished. These discoveries turned those assumptions upside down. We now see that some Mesozoic mammals were big, fast, and fierce. They had sturdy legs and multi-cusped teeth for chewing different foods. Some even had short, pointed snouts, hinting at a wide variety of diets and lifestyles. All of them wore fur and nursed their young. Traits we now know were already present when dinosaurs still ruled the earth. They were not meek shadow dwellers, but active players in their ecosystems. They also shared the traits that define mammals: warm blood, fur, and milk for their young. In fact, these creatures are distant ancestors of our own lineage. Paleontologists even found Rhipenomammus giganticus, up to 2 meters long, truly a giant among mammals of its time. Another fossil, the Laticotherium, could glide from tree to tree on wing-like membranes, and Castorocauda swam with otter-like webbed feet. These ancient mammals filled many unexpected niches. Some were gliders, others swimmers, and some dug burrows for food. All the while, early tyrannosaurs prowled the same forests. For now, these fossils force us to rewrite the textbooks. Mammals were not just waiting in the wings of history. So how did these mammalian underdogs thrive in a world dominated by giants? Could clues hidden in their fossils reveal how we, as mammals, eventually inherited the Earth? 250 million years ago, Earth was a furnace. The world was scorching hot, with volcanic eruptions and wildfires painting the sky orange, and air thick with ash. Even a Tyrannosaurus rex would have begged for a cool cave. Imagine walking on cracked riverbeds, where even the morning sun scorches your skin. The ancestors of mammals were strange, almost lizard-like creatures struggling to stay cool. Thrinaxodon is one of them, about the size of a small dog, with short legs splayed out to the sides and no external ears, but a warm, furry body underneath. It had a reptile's skull and a warm, furry coat. To escape the oppressive heat, it dug burrows along ancient riverbanks. Deep underground, it could find cooler, stable conditions. In 2017, scientists X-rayed a block of rock from one such fossil burrow using a synchrotron, an X-ray microscope 100 billion times more powerful than a hospital scanner. On the screen appeared 2 figures, Thrinaxodon itself, curled up as if sleeping, and another creature, an amphibian called Brumastega. This was a shock. The Brumastega had 7 broken ribs that were healing, evidence of a serious injury. And yet, there it was, lying right next to Thrinaxodon, inside the burrow. What could have happened underground? Did the injured amphibian sneak in and find shelter beside the mammal? Or did the mammal tolerate a new roommate while estivating in the heat? To this day, paleontologists can only wonder, how did these 2 very different survivors end up sharing a home deep below the sizzling Triassic surface? Tiny teeth, big surprises. Even a millimeter-sized molar can change our understanding of history. Fossil jaws from China reveal many tools in miniature. Rows of cusps, spikes, and ridges. They carried mouthfuls of tools, incisors for grabbing, slicing canines, multi-cusped grinders, all in one tiny skull. Species like Eomaya and Synodelphus, around 125 million years ago, already had complex molars. The toolkit for modern mammals was in place long before the dinosaurs disappeared. Indeed, fossils from about 125 million years ago show the first true placental mammals. Genetic clues hint the mammal family tree goes back even further. Scientists debate whether mammals quietly evolved alongside dinosaurs or waited for them to die out. Each new fossil of a furred jaw adds a piece to the puzzle. Now paleontologists have unearthed similarly intricate jaws from the late Jurassic across all continents. Every new tooth nudges the timeline a bit more. How many more ancient stories lie buried in rock, waiting for us to uncover them? Who can say what marvels await in the next layer of rock? Imagine diving into a Jurassic ocean and coming face to face with a monster. In the ancient seas, predators like plesiosaurs and pliosaurs of incredible size lurked beneath sunlit waves. A humongous fish, or even a shark ancestor like Hybidus, might circle nearby. To picture the scale, one marine reptile, Kronosaurus, could reach up to 12 meters long, longer than a bus, with razor-sharp teeth, ideal for slicing through swimming prey. Hold one of those ancient teeth in your palm. It looks like a miniature mountain range carved in stone, rimmed in translucent enamel. By its shape, we can guess a lot. Only mammals have a triple-cusped molar, 3 little peaks for grinding. Behind them are sharp canine fangs for gripping, and in front are flat incisors for nipping. A full toolkit in one jaw. This complex dentition is a mammalian fingerprint. Nothing else living back then had front teeth, canines, and grinding teeth all in one mouth. From the tooth pattern, scientists immediately knew it was a mammal, not a reptile. Moreover, tooth shape tells its diet. Blades and spikes mean insectivores. Broad, flat crowns mean plant eaters. In a way, these teeth are a prehistoric menu. Some fossils even show wear patterns, as if the animal gnawed one last time before dying. But in the end, teeth whisper only what these creatures ate. They leave the creature's appearance to our imagination. It's like knowing someone's favorite snack from an empty wrapper, but not seeing the person. We can map out diets and ecological roles, but we still wonder, what did these tiny mammals really look like? Imagine kneeling in a clay quarry, sifting rich, reddish mud through your fingers, when a glint of golden amber catches the sunlight. It's 2008, and 2 paleontologists in western France are hunting for clues in Cretaceous rock. Around them, layers of sand, ochre clay, and thin coal veins lie stacked like pages in a history book. Suddenly, one of them spots a gorgeous fossil leaf embedded in the rock. It's from a forest that thrived 100 million years ago. To their astonishment, the dried conifer leaf cracks off in their hand and gently flexes as if time had only stained it brown. Its color changed, but its texture is strangely lifelike, preserved so perfectly that even after 100 million years, it almost seems alive. Yet that leaf is just a hint of the treasure the quarry holds. The real prize was hidden in droplets among the sediment. Conifer resin, the amber that oozed from trees back then, can trap anything. The scientists scoop buckets of sediment into a pond and gently wash it, revealing dozens of tiny shards of amber, glowing red gold in the water. They soak these pieces to make cracks vanish underwater before X-raying them, a field trick to see inclusions clearly. Each fragment is a fragment of sunlight, a promise of secrets. It's like stumbling onto a buried chest of time. What if one piece holds a part of a creature, frozen from that vanished world? Inside one especially shiny chunk of amber, the unimaginable emerges. A single sliver-thin strand of mammal fur, curled gently within. The discovery is like finding a lock of hair from someone who lived among dinosaurs. Under the microscope, the hair is astonishing. It looks nearly identical to a strand from a modern mammal. It has the same overlapping scale pattern and delicate barbs. Scientists compared this 100-million-year-old hair to hairs from living animals and found them almost indistinguishable. The very existence of this hair proves that warm-blooded mammals already had furry coats 100 million years ago. That fur, preserved forever, must have kept those little creatures warm in a world ruled by reptiles. It's like the past wrote to us in a single fiber. Skip ahead to Cretaceous China. We stand in a dense forest by a steaming lake under a lavender sky. Towering above are the titanosaurs, long-necked behemoths, 30 tons each, reaching for the treetop ferns. If one accidentally stepped on something small below, it probably wouldn't even notice. Meanwhile, at our feet, in the tangled underbrush, scurries a creature the size of a squirrel. This is Eomaya scansauria, literally, ancient mother, walking on tiptoe ankles along the lake's edge about 125 million years ago. It's a serendipitous find, a nearly complete skeleton of this tiny mammal ancestor. Everything about Eomaya says it was a climber. Its limbs are long and graceful, its fingers ending in delicate claws, ready to grasp bark. Its hind limbs are elongated, and its ankles are flexible, built for scrambling through branches. Even its tail is long and stiff, acting as a balancing pole. Its teeth are sharp little cones and triangles, ideal for slicing insects and maybe a bit of plant matter. In essence, Eomaya was built for life in the trees. We can imagine it pausing on a branch, looking down at the predators below with calm indifference, leaving its babies safely in a nest high above ground. It's as if we see a distant cousin from deep time, a tiny mammal ancestor perched above a sleeping dinosaur, choosing no meal for itself and watching for danger. Volcanic eruptions helped preserve this scene. In Liaoning's Yixian Formation, repeated eruptions blanketed the landscape with ash. When Eomaya died or was trapped near the lake, a blanket of ash quickly covered it and cemented its remains in place. Today, paleontologists carefully brush away gray and red ash from the fossil. In Beijing's Natural History Museum, they reveal Eomaya from nose to tail. Tiny, delicate bones, even fur impressions. Every detail can be studied, but still, some questions remain. Did she look more like a mouse or a possum? We know it confirms that by this time, placental ancestors had fur, acute hearing, and agile limbs, all modern features. Yet her life remains partly a mystery. In the flickering lamplight of the museum, a scientist holds another incredible fossil, Rhipenomammus, a squat mammal about 2 feet long, roughly the size of a large dog. It lived in the same world as Eomaya, but it was built like a miniature bear. Its broad shoulders and powerful jawbones suggest strength far beyond any small insectivore. The extraordinary part was found inside one specimen. Preserved in the belly area were bones of a young Psittacosaurus, a small dinosaur. In other words, this mammal was literally eating dinosaurs. This was the first proof that at least some Mesozoic mammals preyed on dinosaurs. Imagine it. A pack of beaver-sized mammals tearing into baby dinosaurs. A scene straight out of a wild cartoon. Rhipenomammus's teeth match its diet. Sharp incisors and slicing molars straight from a carnivore's toolbox. It likely hunted at night, sniffing out nests in the undergrowth. One paleontologist quipped that it was enjoying dinosaur jerky. In its day, Rhipenomammus was a heavyweight in the undergrowth, proving that early mammals weren't all timid. If a pack of these hunters roamed the forests, what strategies did they use to avoid angry herbivores? The echoes of such unlikely predator-prey interactions still challenge our imagination. In northeastern China's lush woodlands, yet another surprise was uncovered. Paleontologists found Volaticotherium antiquus, a small mammal that could glide through the trees. Picture this furry acrobat. It would climb a tall tree, then leap off, stretching out a fur-covered membrane between its limbs and hip. Under magnification, its fossil shows a patagium, a wing of skin, like a mini parachute. In effect, the Volaticotherium was a Jurassic flying squirrel. It climbed high, spread its lacy wings, and silently coasted downward to hunt insects under the moon. This discovery flipped our picture of early mammals on its head. We had assumed bats, 50 million years later, were the first flying mammals. But here was evidence of a gliding mammal 125 million years ago, living at the same time as dinosaurs. It was as if Volaticotherium had quietly opened a wing shop long before anyone noticed. Its bones are lightweight and elongated. Its tail acted like a rudder, much like the wingsuit of a modern flying squirrel. It shows that mammals explored air travel long before birds or bats ever did. The nocturnal hunter waited for dusk to launch into the air. It's fascinating to think, while dinosaurs stamped the earth by day, this tiny mammal ghosted through the branches at night. Does this ghostly acrobat hint at more hidden innovators in the Mesozoic world? But this is not where the story ends. In a lab in Oldenburg, Germany, researchers collected DNA sequences from nearly every living mammal. They compared dozens of genes and ran a molecular clock back through the ages. The result was shocking. The common ancestor of all placental mammals dates to about 160 million years ago, deep in the Jurassic. It suggests that placental lineages, rodents, carnivores, primates, and more, began diverging well before dinosaurs disappeared. The DNA paints a very ancient timeline. Yet paleontologists digging in Cretaceous rock find no fossil evidence of these modern groups until after the dinosaurs vanished. It's as if the molecules insist they were there, while the rock says, "Show me the proof." Scientists compare it to reconstructing a family tree from birthdays instead of baby photos. You get dates, but no snapshots. Which story is correct? Is the genetic clock ticking too fast? Or is the fossil record missing whole chapters? In other words, whose timeline will ultimately hold up under scrutiny? Meanwhile, another crucial clue emerged from Mongolia. A team led by John Weibel discovered a mammal skull, Mesungulon gobiensis, in 75 million year old rock. He compared hundreds of its skeletal features to those of dozens of mammals. The verdict? Mesungulon was not a true placental at all, but an aunt or cousin. It fell outside the placental group. In other words, even in the late Cretaceous, all discovered mammal fossils belong to ancestors of modern groups, not the groups themselves. This supports the idea that the definitive placentals waited until after the dinosaurs. Going back even further, paleontologists unearthed creatures that blur the line between mammals and reptiles. Zangiotherium, about 160 million years old, looks like a strange blend. It had full fur, confirming it was warm-blooded. We can't be sure if it laid eggs like a platypus, but one thing is certain. Zangiotherium nursed its young. The infants likely licked rich milk from patches of skin on the mother's belly, just as baby platypuses do today. This shows lactation was already evolving in these ancient mammals. Lactation would have been a lifeline during lean times, but it came at a cost. The little ones had to stay close. Archaeopteryx has one more bizarre feature: a bony spur on its hind leg, just like the venomous spur on a platypus. In modern platypuses, that spur delivers a painful sting. In Archaeopteryx, it probably wasn't as potent, but it's a clue that early mammals were experimenting with defenses. It's as if a tiny kitten had a shark tooth strapped to its heel. We don't know if Archaeopteryx's spur held poison or was just a brutal thorn, but it shows these animals had tricks. Snakes and insects had venomous fangs and stingers. A mammalian venom was rare. Did any predator ever learn the hard way that even a small mammal could be dangerous? Another ancient trick was caught in the act: our ear bones. All modern mammals have 3 tiny bones in each ear: the hammer, anvil, and stirrup, which amplify sound. But in reptiles, those bones helped anchor the jaw. A Liaoning fossil, about 120 million years old, finally caught evolution mid-transition. In this creature, the hammer and anvil had nearly detached from the jaw, hanging by a thin strip of cartilage. It was as if evolution paused, physically moving the speakers of hearing from our jawline into our ears. This separation created the advanced middle ear of mammals. Tiny bones, big advantage. The change gave these animals ultra-sensitive hearing, letting them catch the faintest footsteps or the quietest insect sounds. That gave them more time to react to predators. Remarkably, each mammal embryo still repeats this change in the womb. Our own development echoes that ancient transition. It's incredible that a single fossil could reveal the ancestry of our sense of hearing. Even teeth held more secrets. Gregory Wilson at the University of Washington used a CT scanner, like an X-ray microscope, on hundreds of multituberculate teeth. These were small, rodent-like mammals living under the dinosaurs. The scans revealed something startling. These multituberculates underwent a dental revolution long before the asteroid hit. Their molars sprouted dozens or even hundreds of cusps. One molar looked like a tiny mountain range under magnification. Wilson compared it to finding alien skyscrapers on a tooth. One species had around 300 cusps on its tooth row, compared to roughly 100 on a typical carnivore. This complexity was perfect for processing plants and seeds. It's as if each tooth became a Swiss Army knife for the new fruits and flowers emerging. These multituberculates were eating foods we'd never imagined. They quietly raced ahead while dinosaurs dominated elsewhere. The fossil hunt finally delivered a missing chapter. In 2011, Liaoning farmers found a fossil of a tiny mammal named Jurassic sinensis, the Jurassic mother. At about 160 million years old, it became the oldest known placental mammal. Its teeth show it was a true placental, just as the genetic data predicted. Suddenly, placental mammals had to be pushed back another 35 million years. It was as if the ground itself agreed with the DNA's timeline. With Jurassic, the evolutionary tree's roots sank deeper. By now it's clear, early mammals were far more diverse and adaptable than once thought. They were furry, hearing keen, and breathing warm, even while living in the shadows of dinosaurs. They climbed trees, glided through the air, and even hunted dinosaurs. These were not just timid mouse ancestors. They were resourceful pioneers. And yet, even after uncovering so much, many questions remain. How many more ancestors lie waiting in rocks or amber, just out of reach? How did these tiny mammals really live day to day, in the Jurassic and Cretaceous worlds. The Earth's story still has blank chapters, each fossil discovery a new clue.